Well, good morning, and let's hope that we have a little bit better luck this morning with sound than we did yesterday morning. It's just nothing like double checking your program afterwards and see that your lips are moving. But actually, my good friend in Victoria, in British Columbia, who tunes in from time to time, Mary, I know her as Mary McCall, Mary Halsall, immediately emailed me and said, your lips are moving, but nothing is coming out. And then I think she put a little thing that said, hooray. It's lovely to have supporters and friends. Anyway, Keith Hayes with Mirador, Mirador Television, followed by Rouser Radio at 6 o'clock. And it's now 5:46. And welcome to our morning show, Break an Egg. We still haven't quite got the video right in terms of how it will play out. For some reason, and I suspect there might be a nasty frame in there, it rejects it at the moment, and it's probably a safeguard that that frame is owned by somebody else and we're going to break copyright, so I'm a bit grateful. The first one, we did have a complaint of copyright on the music, which is a bit strange because it came from a common area where the providers of video use it to back their various videos, but it said it was copyright, and so we've played the game and dropped it. That needs reforming, but we'll get it right eventually, and we've had not a bad week one way or another. First of all, one of the things that is always increasingly a problem is the freedom of the press. We tend to take it for granted, but you know, we shouldn't take it for granted because people in power, governments of every hue, every kind, do not like unfettered journalism. Now, by unfettered journalism, I'm not talking about some of the websites that pop up where people can say anything that's unsupported. That's not it at all. Freedom of the press carries responsibility, and whenever you say something and you're critical of those in power, it must be accurate. But there is a lady in the Philippines who worked for CNN for 15 or 20 years, pretty good pedigree. She's opened up a web-based television operation. She is very critical of the government. It has gained a huge following. Unlike us, we're critical of the government too. We haven't gained our huge following yet, although I must say that we keep on adding people on a day-to-day basis, and we are getting reactions from people that I know in various parts of the world. So we're grateful for that, but we are growing and we'll get there. And in the meantime, we try hard to keep the content flowing that will interest everybody who watches us and anybody who is a potential viewer. But anyway, this lady is very critical of the government. She's got a very good and strong following, and she's been arrested. And she's been arrested on what they call cyber libel. Now, one of the things about the web is that you can more or less do anything that you want. You're not subject to any broadcast rules or any other. There are two exceptions to that. First of all, you can't break the law of the country, the law of the land. And secondly, you must be very careful about advertising because that in itself can be censured because it is a question of the law which protects children and vulnerable people and certain con artists and so on and so forth. That's eminently sensible. Cyber libel is a different matter. That must be a libel that is accepted by the law of the land. And our famous case here that established that principle in our law courts was a case brought against Sally Burkhoff, or Sally Burkow, I think they prefer to be called. If you're in Eastern Europe, that W becomes an F, Burkhoff, or a V, one or two. And she libeled I think it was an MP, and he took her to court. She, I think, was fined a pretty hefty amount, something like 50,000. It was a pretty bad libel. But the judge said that this be a lesson to broadcasters on the web, is you're not exempt from the law of the land, and that if you make a libel and you appear before the courts, they should show no mercy, and they should treat you as if you've libeled in a newspaper, a book, or whether you've used the word of mouth, which is a bit more difficult to prove than the written word, but nonetheless it can be taken to court. So he gave fair warning. So this lady has been accused of cyber libel. However, lawyers have looked at what she said and can find nothing that breaks the law of the Philippines. However, they accuse the president of picking on her and instigating charges against her to bring her to court and put her in prison to shut her up. He, of course, denies it. However, there are independent documented cases where not only she, but also members of the independent media who are critical of that government are being harassed and harangued and thrown into the jug. Now, why would we be worried about what happens in the Philippines? Because, once again, we may be local, but we're not parochial. And every effort is made by all sorts of people, mostly indirectly, because nobody wants to be accused of zipping the press in this country. But every effort is made to shut people up. Politicians particularly don't like it. Many people don't like it if, in fact, you tend to make them a centre of fun. If you ridicule them, it is said that the one thing that President Putin doesn't like, he can stand any criticism, pretty tough cookie actually, but he can stand any criticism, but don't ridicule him, because if you ridicule him, he really gets very upset, and that's when he tends to lash out at media. So that seems to be more or less the case with politicians. They can stand any amount of criticism, but they can't and don't like being ridiculed. So if that's a weapon in our arsenal, that's fine. But even when we ridicule, we've got to make sure that we don't step over the line and break the law, libel, and get thrown into the jug. Because we are supposed to be a country where freedom of the press is sacrosanct, but rarely is. Pressures can be brought to bear in all sorts of ways to keep mouths that roar at bay, and we shouldn't let that happen. All right, that's what's happening in the Philippines. Don't let it happen here. We particularly, on Mirador Television and at Rouser Radio, even though we're web-based, and even though our client base, if you want to call it that, our viewership is only slowly growing, although we do hit occasionally, if we hit a spark and somebody gets very excited about it and shares it, we do get up to 6,000 or 7,000 people tuning in, and over a week we've had 60,000 to 70,000, and these figures come from Facebook themselves, and that doesn't count anything that may come from YouTube, our own site, or any other outlet for that matter. So I guess that's not bad. In fact, if they all came from Lewis, that would be almost all people of voting age. Not quite. We've got 17,000 people in the constituency. If you take off a little bit of the top for those who are sick and unable to participate, and the bottom, say from 11 on downwards, you take off a couple of thousand, but I suppose 6,000 is about half the population of Lewis. The only thing we do know is that part of those numbers come from abroad, and we're very happy that there are like-minded people abroad, people who want to know what's going on in Lewis, who want to listen to us, because they can apply it to their own communities and see what we're suffering, and they're able to say, oh, tut, 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 that's what's happening to us, and they get a feeling of comfort from it. I mean, they've told us that, and that's why possibly next week or the week after, certainly the beginning of March, we shall start to get reports from other districts, other parts of this part of the world, East Sussex, but also we shall have a couple of people from outside telling us what's happening in their part of the woods, neck of the woods, and they will come from other parts of the UK, but also from other parts of the world. And it is important for us to know that we are not isolated here, that some of the problems that we face quite locally, quite specifically locally in Lewes, let alone from Battle to Brighton, that other people are sharing what we're going through. And nothing could be truer than our Lewes District Council, who fit absolutely everything that is wrong about councils. I suppose you're sick of hearing, those people who are with me on a regular basis, but those who are joining us, that Harvard University have done a study which shows that the bigger the shrinkage in local media, the higher the taxes and the greater the inefficiency of councils. And particularly when we get a new council on May the 2nd, I assume we're going to get a new council. I know some people have told me that they're running, and we've never seen their faces before, and I hope we're not like lemmings. I hope that we don't just vote for a name that we recognise without understanding the issues. Go out and find the issues, talk, because there's a lot that needs putting right in this council. But anyway, on the 2nd of May, you get a chance to go and vote and to change the system. But there is going to be deep changes in the system anyway, according to my informants, and we'll look forward to those. I'm not sure we should say with glee, but certainly a certain amount of trepidation, because often it's said, be careful what you wish for, and the devil you know is better than the devil you don't. Who knows what changes are going to be made? But if in fact they restrict the press, I think there might be a bit of an uproar. Society at the moment is on a knife edge. We do not have good leadership, and we have reached 6 o'clock, and it's time for me to stop ranting. So I'm glad that you've been with me. There's lots more that I want to say on this issue, but tomorrow, for the last day of the week, we will take a look at some specifics from the council, some of the things that you should be looking at, some of the things you should be debating, some of the questions you should be asking your politicians. So until tomorrow, let's hope that they don't do this to us, because in a funny sort of way they're trying through the back door. That's the way politicians do it, you know. Well, it's not the politicians so much, it's the executive. They're the people that are sensitive. The politicians, as I say, unless you ridicule them, they really have got very thick skins. Their executive less so, and can be quite vindictive. So we have to be careful. But we will continue to do this, and now we're going upstairs to the radio studio, and I'm hoping that what we'll do is we'll get on the air today properly, because we had the same disaster as we did yesterday with the with television. So forgive me if I disappear, and I'll look forward to seeing you tomorrow morning. Toodle pip.
I never made it, but I know what it takes. I'm on